Welcome to After the Fact. For the Pew Charitable Trusts, I'm Dan LeDuc. In our recent season on race and research, we heard from a number of experts how diversity among researchers often leads to more robust analysis and better solutions to the problems facing society. To continue that conversation, we talked with Fanta Traore, the co-founder and chief executive officer of the Sadie Collective. Its mission, to encourage and support Black women to study economics and the related sciences. We started by learning a little bit about Fanta.
I am originally from New York City, one of the most diverse cities in the world, arguably, but also one of the most segregated. And so growing up in that environment, that brought up a lot of questions for me related to opportunity and resource distribution. And in hindsight, I know that these were all questions that are central to economics. And just to give you an example of the kind of questions I was thinking about growing up, I was wondering about when I would cross over from Manhattan into Harlem, why the neighborhoods were so different, why the Harlem side wasn't as clean as, say, the Manhattan side, for instance. And the way I rationalized this as a young person was that this had to do with politics. And to some degree it does. So that's what led me to going to Howard University and studying political science and also having a focus on African politics because of my Malian heritage as well. But what was really a turning point for me in my economics career was when I did a summer program at Princeton where a policymaker introduced the concept of economic research to work that she did to us. And basically what she shared was that she used economic research to end a food desert in Harlem. And when I learned about that, I was completely mind blown and so excited to learn more. So I went back to Howard and declared a second major, and that was economics. And it meant a mad dash of taking nearly 10 classes so that I could now have this economics major. But it was one of the best decisions that I've made.
And was it the idea that this abstract subject like economics could actually do stuff like end a food desert?
Exactly. Economics is central to policymaking. So to see that she was using this research to create an impact, to create outcomes that basically transform the trajectory of individuals who I identified as being a part of my community was really fascinating to me.
So we're here to talk about the dearth of women of color in the field. It's a field about numbers. What are the numbers?
So just to give a data point that speaks to my experience, the numbers are really bad when it comes to the undergraduate level and who's studying economics for Black women. It's approximately 600 to 700 over the 2015 to 2019 period. This is compared to approximately 33,000 white women who are studying economics over that period as well. And when we look at the numbers for Black men and women of color, it's also quite comparable. And what really helps to illustrate this is the numbers of those who are pursuing PhDs in economics. For Black men and Black women who are graduating with PhDs in economics, it's about 4 on an annual basis out of 1,200 people. That is in all of the United States and basically less than 1% of the population of those who are pursuing PhDs in economics. For women of color, it's about 12 in total. So that is 8 Latinx identifying women, that is 4 Black women, and 0 Native American. When we're looking at the Federal Reserve, for instance, there are no Black economists. So when you have institutions like the Federal Reserve that require one to have a PhD to work there, what we're getting is not diverse thinking when it comes to governing the economy.
Well, yeah, those are stark numbers, as you said, and it does address diversity of thinking. What is the actual impact of those numbers in how we do research and how we make policy?
Yeah, so what this means is that the policy that's currently being implemented is not being done so by a diverse group of people. And policy is about people. It affects all kinds of people. And it's so critical to have diverse voices at the table. So an example of where this lack of diversity has failed the US economy is with the Great Recession that we had in 2008. In 2008, we witnessed one of the greatest recessions in history. And a big reason for that was the subprime mortgage lending that was happening to Black and Brown communities. So in summary, what happened was that Black and Brown communities were being given loans of really high interest rates, and we were not able to observe that at the Federal Reserve. And what that meant is that we weren't able to see and predict what was happening and catch it in time in order to subvert what became one of the largest economic crises in history, and that continues to have implications today. And so if there were a diverse set of economists at the Fed, that would have enabled better policymaking. And currently, some countries still have not recovered from the Great Recession, which is why the Dodd-Frank Act, which was an act enacted to regulate financial institutions, mandated by diversity moving forward for federal regulators. So the hope is that moving forward, that we have a diverse set of economists who govern the economy so that we aren't suffering from the outcomes that occur due to that lack of diversity.
In specifics there, I mean, race was a factor that was going on. And of the many economists looking at them, not many were of color. And so perhaps the question of race and color really didn't even enter their heads.
There's a lot of groupthink when we have people who have the similar experiences making decisions at the table. And what we also know, though, is that when we have diverse groups, we're able to avoid that groupthink. We're able to have better decision making and innovation and even increase profits. And in this case, protect the economy.
You use the phrase groupthink. That doesn't always have the best of connotations associated with it because of limited thinkings. What do you mean? And what comes out of a diverse group?
What's really fascinating is some research that was conducted by Kimberly Phillips, who is the vice dean at Columbia Business School. And what she's found is that when we have homogenous groups, so groups of individuals who are very similar, they will work through a problem and then get to a solution fairly quickly and think that they are doing a really great job. Whereas when we have heterogeneous groups, so groups of people who are different from one another working on a problem, they will actually get to better results. However, in that process, it is uncomfortable, it takes long, and their perception of what they are doing is that they are not doing their best. But the reality is that they are getting to results. And what we can think of this as is as though one is going to the gym, right? So if you're going to the gym and you just walk in and out, you can say that you went to the gym and you actually won't get any results. But if you go to the gym and you allow yourself to be uncomfortable and you put in the work and the time and the effort, what will happen is that you will be in some pain, you'll be in a bit of discomfort, but you will get results. So in the context of diversity, it's important to recognize that we might find even ourselves to be in uncomfortable situations and have uncomfortable experiences and conversations, but we'll get results that are in turn going to be beneficial for the larger whole. So there's definitely a need for more young women of color to be in the economic space. And there is a huge opportunity there. And that's where the Sadie Collective comes in.
You are now in graduate work at Yale in economics and are a co-founder of the Sadie Collective. So for people who have been listening, waiting to hear, now's our chance to tell them, what is it and how did it get its name?
So the Sadie Collective is named for America's first Black economist. And my co-founder and I named it for her because She is someone who paved the way for us to be in this field. And although she did not have the chance to practice her work as an economist, she was very much still asking critical economic questions. And we have to thank Dr. Julian Malveaux and also Dr. Nina Banks, who have uncovered her work and who are both Black women economists. So the collective was born out of myself and Anna Gifty, my co-founders, own experience of racial isolation in the field. And as we were matriculating in the field, we wanted to build a community. And this community started off with something that we needed for ourselves and has continued to grow to become an initiative that's all about building the pipeline and pathway for Black women's careers in economics. In that work, it's critical for us to be able to support young up and coming women in the field. And we also support women through the pathway. So what this means is that we're looking at 4 key groups that we serve: high school, undergraduate students, graduate students, as well as professionals. But we also have a 5th group, and that's allies. Allies are absolutely critical to our work because in a field where only 4 Black women are getting PhDs in economics annually, the role of allies is critical for them to continue to thrive. And as an organization, what we do is we provide resources for every node in these Black women's careers, but then also for allies, because it's incredibly important for them to be a part of the solution too. And what we're finding through the research that we do, because as economists leading this organization, measurement is critical for us, we are finding that when Black women are exposed to careers in economics, they find it interesting and they want to explore it more. Role models are absolutely critical to that, and having young Black women economists who are on the undergraduate level, graduate, or established in the profession, exposed to high school students is critical. When it comes to graduate students, giving them exposure and airtime is incredibly important. So we have a research scholars program, which we execute annually with the Brookings Institution, that allows graduate students to present their research widely. And this past year, we've had about 400 people attend from all across the United States and the world to hear about the research that our scholars are doing. That exposure is really great for them as they prepare to go on the job market and then pitch for a job where they can work full time and really explore these research interests. When it comes to professionals, citations are an incredibly important currency in academia. The way we support professionals is by getting their work out and normalizing what it looks like to be an economist who is non-white and male at that. At the Sadie Collective, we are getting the word out about the work that Black economists are doing so that it becomes more mainstream.
As an economist, you got out of school and you went into this field and you started going to a professional meeting or a professional conference. And I'm guessing there, again, weren't a lot of people who looked like you at those conferences. What was that like for you?
There wasn't. As someone who has been used to diversity, and that was basically my floor, it was very shocking and uncomfortable for me. So again, I grew up in New York City, and then I went off to Howard University, a historically Black university. And then I went to work at a Pan-African school in South Africa, then came back and worked at a social innovation incubator where there was no hesitancy when it came to giving out loans or stipends to formerly incarcerated men who are starting really innovative businesses. And then I went to the Fed and then started going to these economics conferences. And in many spaces, I'd be the only Black woman there. So it was uncomfortable at first, but I found my way out of playing small, which is where I initially found myself to navigate those spaces. And my way out of that was through building the Sadie Collective community. So it started prior to me being at the Fed, and it was something that was very important for me. But then also there was a strong network of Howard University students and alum who are associated with the Federal Reserve. So that was also really great for me to tap into. And the American Economic Association summer program, which is all about diversifying those who are graduating with PhDs in economics.
Well, you've now accomplished a lot in your academic and professional career. What would you say to the young women who are thinking about all of this and see your experience and are intrigued? What would you say to encourage them?
I love this question. It's important to reflect and establish what your value system is. Economics can be a very hierarchical environment in terms of rankings being very prominent and important for what kind of job offers you then get. And your GRE score is also something that is quantified and is viewed as an important way to then get into those schools. And when you get caught up in this rat race and you haven't given some thought about your value system, you can lose yourself in that. So I think that it's really important for you to think about what matters to you, but really knowing what that is and allowing that to guide you is my first piece of advice. And then my second is to not get discouraged by what you are experiencing in Econ one-on-one courses. They are not great. Econ one-on-one courses are not as interesting as what the world of economics is and what it can offer. So I would say go straight to the interesting questions that you wonder about by looking up journal articles and seeing what economists are saying about them. And then my third piece of advice is to research how women have showed up in the economic space. And that's because women show up differently in the space because of the unique perspective that we bring forward. With myself and my co-founder, when we learned about Dr. Sadie Alexander and all that she's done in this space without even having the chance to practice economics, it was very invigorating for us. My fourth piece of advice is to appreciate that economics is not just about economists. Economics touches everything, right? With the current pandemic that we are in, we're seeing psychology show up in terms of how people react to the vaccine. And there's a lot that you can learn from the intersections of economics with other fields. So take a look at some individuals in psychology and sociology, et cetera, and see how their work explores the question of power and how that intersects with economics. Too often we see in the economics field that there is a focus on just the data, but there's also this qualitative element too that is very important, and it's being done pretty well in other disciplines. So I would implore you to explore those as well.
Well, Fanta Traore, thank you so much for this.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And thanks for listening. To hear more conversations about race and research, please visit pewtrust.org/afterthefact. I'm Dan LeDuc, and this is After the Fact from the Pew Charitable Trusts.